In the fall of 1952, American families gathered around their television sets for something unprecedented. What they witnessed wasn't escapist entertainment or variety shows. Instead, they watched actual footage of naval battles, kamikaze attacks, and the brutal reality of war at sea. This was Victory at Sea, and it would change television forever. But how did a documentary series about World War II naval combat become one of the most influential programs in television history? The answer involves a visionary producer, millions of feet of forgotten film, a Broadway legend, and the U.S. Navy's surprising willingness to confront the recent past. Our story begins with Henry Salomon, known to his friends as Pete. During World War II, Salomon served as a naval officer and lieutenant commander, working as a research assistant to historian Samuel Eliot Morison. Morison was then working on his epic 15-volume History of United States Naval Operations in World War II, and assigned Salomon to carry out research for the project. Salomon spent the next several years, all the way to 1948, traveling all over the Pacific, including Japan, to conduct his research. During this time, Salomon witnessed firsthand the massive documentation effort the military was undertaking. Combat cameramen were everywhere, recording every major operation, every battle, every moment they could capture. By war's end, the team had compiled 60 million feet of film. When Salomon joined NBC as a producer after the war, he couldn't stop thinking about those films. Most of that footage sat in government archives, unseen by the American public. Salomon convinced NBC's top executives to bankroll the preparation and production of this prodigious project. The response was initially skeptical. America was trying to move forward. The war was over. Did people really want to relive those traumatic years just 7 years after it ended? Would sponsors support such a somber program? But Salomon was persistent. He argued that this wasn't just about looking backward. This was about preservation, about honoring those who served, about creating a historical record before the footage deteriorated or was lost forever. Television was still finding its identity as a medium. Here was a chance to prove it could be more than just entertainment. NBC approved the project in 1951, with Salomon as producer and a budget of $500,000, which was an enormous sum for television of that era. The challenge ahead was staggering. Salomon's team, composed largely of newsreel veterans, searched naval archives around the world and received cooperation from the U.S. Navy, which recognized the publicity value. They didn't limit themselves to American sources. They also obtained film from British, German, and Japanese sources. For 3 years, the team worked in archives and editing rooms. They compiled 60 million feet of film, which was edited to about 61,000 feet for broadcast. Much of the footage was cataloged poorly or not at all. They had to identify ships, verify locations, and confirm dates. They interviewed veterans to help piece together the context of various battles. It was detective work on a massive scale. The series was structured into 26 half-hour segments, airing Sunday afternoons at 3 o'clock Eastern Time in most markets, starting in October 1952 and ending in May 1953. The episodes would take viewers on a chronological journey through the naval war in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters. Salomon faced a crucial challenge: how to transform raw combat footage into compelling television. The answer lay in meticulous editing, powerful narration, and original music. Actor Leonard Graves was chosen as the narrator. He was best known at the time for replacing Yul Brynner as the lead in The King and I on Broadway. His authoritative voice would provide context and continuity across the 26 episodes.
Field Marshal Rommel, the Desert Fox, one-time hero of the Africa Corps, commands the coastal defense. He multiplies the fortifications and sows death on the beaches for those who dare transgress.
For the musical score, in the fall of 1951, NBC television executive Pat Weaver asked the well-known Broadway composer Richard Rodgers if he would consider doing work for the United States Navy. Rodgers, fresh off several successful Broadway musicals, including Oklahoma, The King and I, and South Pacific, was signed to compose the musical score. Rodgers provided 12 musical themes on 17 pages of sheet music and turned them over to his longtime orchestrator, Robert Russell Bennett. Bennett did the orchestrating, transforming Rodgers' themes for a variety of moods and composing much more original material than Rodgers. The music became integral to the series' emotional impact. Fellow Navy veterans M. Clay Adams served as director and Richard Hanser as co-scriptwriter, rounding out the creative team. Salomon's team structured each episode as a story, not just a collection of battle scenes. They interwove footage of naval operations with shots of the human cost, exhausted sailors, damaged ships limping home, memorial services at sea. They showed the monotony of war as well as its violence. The editing choices were revolutionary for television at the time. Rather than sensationalizing the combat footage, Salomon let the images speak for themselves. A kamikaze attack didn't need hyperbolic narration. The footage was powerful enough. The surrender ceremony on the USS Missouri needed no embellishment. This restraint and respect for the material created something greater than the sum of its parts. This wasn't just a compilation of war footage. It was history told with honesty and dignity. The production of Victory at Sea occurred during a fascinating political moment. The series premiered in October 1952, just weeks before the presidential election between Dwight D. Eisenhower and Adlai Stevenson on November 4, 1952. Eisenhower, the former Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe and commander of NATO forces, was the Republican nominee, widely popular for his leadership in World War II. Though Victory at Sea focused on naval warfare rather than the European land campaign Eisenhower had led, the series served as a powerful reminder of the recent Allied victory and the leadership that had achieved it. Eisenhower won the election with 55% of the popular vote and a landslide in the Electoral College. The Navy Department itself was deeply involved in facilitating the production, providing access to footage and technical advisors. This wasn't just about nostalgia, it was strategic. In 1952, the Korean War was ongoing, and the military was concerned about maintaining public support for defense spending and military readiness. Victory at Sea served as a powerful reminder of why a strong Navy mattered. The timing raised some questions. Was it appropriate to glorify warfare while American soldiers were dying in Korea? Would it reopen wounds for veterans and families who had lost loved ones? These concerns sparked some debate, though ultimately no serious effort was made to interfere with the broadcast. When Victory at Sea premiered on October 26, 1952, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Critics hailed it as a triumph. In 1953, it won the Peabody Award for Outstanding Television Programming, and in 1954 won the Emmy Award for Best Public Affairs Program. The Peabody Committee stated it took, quote, particular pride in making a special award in honor of Victory at Sea, a series dramatizing the heroism and sacrifice in the great naval engagements of the Second World War. Viewers were transfixed. The series achieved strong ratings, proving that Americans were indeed ready to confront the recent past just 7 years after the war's end. What resonated most was the series' unflinching honesty. This wasn't propaganda, though it certainly celebrated Allied victory. The footage showed the reality of naval combat, ships exploding, planes crashing into the sea, the organized chaos of battle. It honored sacrifice without sanitizing warfare. Veterans responded with powerful emotion. Many wrote to NBC describing how the series helped them process their experiences, or allow them to finally explain to their families what they had gone through. For civilians who had experienced the war from the home front, Victory at Sea provided their first real glimpse of what their loved ones had faced. After the first run, NBC syndicated it to local stations, where it proved successful financially through the mid-1960s. NBC also marketed the series overseas. By 1964, it had been broadcast in 40 foreign markets. A condensed, feature-length version was released in theaters in 1954, with Alexander Scourby as the narrator. Scourby was known as the first person to record the King James Bible on long-play records. The soundtrack album became a bestseller, and Victory at Sea even became standard viewing in schools for decades. The legacy of Victory at Sea extends far beyond its initial broadcast. It played an important part in establishing historic documentaries as a television genre. It demonstrated that archival footage, properly curated and presented, could be as compelling as any scripted drama. In the end, Pete Salomon's vision had been vindicated. Those 60 million feet of film weren't just military records, they were testimony. And through Victory at Sea, that testimony reached millions, creating a shared understanding of one of humanity's darkest and most consequential periods. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.